Welcome back to Photoshop. My name is Arnold Falder, and in today's lesson, lesson number 13, I'm going to show you a couple of automatic functions in Photoshop. So we're going to use ready-made automatic functions to do certain tasks, and we also create our own so-called actions where we can automate certain stuff. So I would like to start with a very simple one, and that is to stitch panorama images. Of course, Photoshop is not the best program to stitch panorama images, but if you do a certain, any panorama that is going up to 180 degrees made out of a couple of pictures, that works quite well. You go to Automate and Photo Merge. With the Photo Merge function, you can merge your panoramas. So here I'm going to start with Photo Merge, and I'm going to pick my pictures. I'm going to browse, and I'm going to choose a panel that's made out of 4 pictures. It's just an extended field of view that I'm use those 4 pictures for. And now you can pick a certain layout. And I tried it before for these pictures. The automatic layout does not work well, but nevertheless I'm going to show you, and then later on I'll show you the right one to use. So let's hit OK. And you will see the pictures will be loaded into Photoshop, and it starts the automatic function Photo Merge, loading all the images, and then it finds all the points where the images could be blended together, and then it's creating an image made out of 4 layers. I'm going to pause the video right here. So there it is. And you can see clearly that the image, of course, looks like a stitched panorama. It might also be okay perspectively, but if I now would like to use it as a regular image, I would have to crop it to a rectangular format. And if I try to crop this image, there's not much left. So if I have to go all the way to here, and you can see that is all that is left. So the automatic function here does not work as well, but if we do the same thing, File, Automate, Photo Merge, and I'm gonna pick one, then Shift the last, and I'm gonna pick a spherical in this case because it works quite well for this example. Then it looks like this. So there it is. So now we have, you can see if I crop it into a rectangular image, it works quite well. So what we got is we got 4 layers, and all those four layers, they all have the areas where they are used, so you can just browse through them. You can see it's all done with a mask. So before you do anything else, like for example cropping it or stitching it or rotating it slightly, which I have to do because the horizon is not level, before you do anything, it is recommended to merge all those layers together, because if you start to somehow transform it, you might end up seeing the gap between the layers. So right now it's perfect. So let's get it together into one layer. Best way is to select all of them and use Control E. You can also go up here to Layer, Flatten Image, or what I have used, Control E, is Merge Layers. But you have to select all the layers that you want to merge. If you only select one, then Control E is the shortcut for merge down. So then it's just merged with the one below if you select one. But you'll just try it. It's quite handy, Control E for your left hand. So there it is. Now I'm going to crop it. Oh no, first level it and then crop it. If you need almost 100% of your image, you can also use, I'll quickly show you can also use the liquify filter that I've shown you before. In the liquify filter, not the one for the face, but for the, you can push certain things. For example, you make a really large brush, and then you can take the corners and push it slightly out. So by doing this, you get just a little bit more of your image, but don't distort it too much. So you can just take the corners and slightly push it out, warp it out, so it's you're gonna get a little bit more here. The blue is quite the easy part, but you see the corners there. Okay, so that's it. I've just got a little bit more out of it, and now And before I crop it, I'm going to level my horizon. Now, there's also multiple ways to do it. You can do a line and find out, see, the horizon is not level. But I prefer the filter, the lens correction. And in lens correction, you get all these, can rotate it slightly and adjust the perspective thing. I think we talked about this before, but I prefer the straighten tool. If it's just for the horizon, here's the straighten tool, and all you need to do is click somewhere here on the horizon and make a straight line as the horizon is now, and then it will be straightened. So now you can see it's perfectly flat. That's all I wanted, so I hit OK. Now my horizon is perfectly flat, and what remains is I use the crop tool, and I have to crop a little bit in order to get rid of those empty areas up there. So the straighten tool made it, I didn't check, maybe the bottom is right, no. So now like this, and double click, and here we are. So now we can go into all kinds of other functions with the pictures, and use the camera raw filter on it if we want to adjust the saturation or something like this. Okay, but today is about the automatic function. So that was it for the panoramic, for stitching a panorama image. I'll show you one more, which you can see it takes a while. Let's automate photo merge, and I've brought a second image. That's this one's made out of 6 different pictures. Again, I think this one is, I shot it with a, let's try a cylindrical for this one. I think I shot it with a tripod, so because it was quite dark just before the thunderstorm. And we are back, so that took about 20 or 25 seconds. And here is again what I meant. So you can see all the images that the 6 layers that are the 6 images that are now 6 layers, and you can also see the masks, what is used in each image. As I said, there are much better programs out there to do panorama stitching, but here you can see a little bit what I meant before, these lines there. So when you zoom in, it's probably they will go away, but there is a risk if you do something with the image, like adjust it slightly or rotate it slightly, that there stays a white line. So make sure before you do anything that you select all your layers, and this time I'm doing it without a shortcut, layer, either merge layers or flatten image, same thing, that you merge them into one layer. Because now if you zoom in, you won't get any straight lines there. So the rest is all the same, crop it and then take it into your desired post-production. Okay, so that was the panorama stitching. The next thing is high dynamic range images. So again, much better software out there to do high dynamic range images. But for right now, what we have is I'm going to create a high dynamic range image out of 3 different images that I shot. So let's go to File, Automate, and this time it's Merge to HDR Pro. HDR stands for High Dynamic Range, and it again asks you where are the images. So you go to Browse and you pick your HDR images. So here is a picture, and you can see that I took a regular exposed image, then we took an underexposed image and an overexposed image. And in all those files, there's something specific. So for example, in the overexposed, you can see much better the details inside the spaces. The underexposed, the lit areas have more detail, and also the sky. And the normal one, we know how it looks like. So let's select all 3 of them. And also make sure that, I think this time again, it's not shot with a tripod, but I'm not sure. Let's go for attempt to automatically align the source images. So if they are slightly off, Photoshop will fix that, and it opens it. First it looks like this, and then it opens in an extra window. So there it is. Merge to HDRI. So that is already a quite good combination of all three images. You can compare it. It is very similar to the one that you would get when you do it with an automatic exposure, but there are some details like in there and in the dark areas that come from the bright ones, and also something from the dark. So there's different ways to do it now, and if you check out what are we going to create, the usual way to do it is to create a 16-bit image. So usually a JPEG would be 8-bit per color channel. In this case, because it's made out of 3 images, so there is some kind of extra dynamic range in it. We can create 8, 16, or 32-bit images. In 16-bit images, we have all kinds of adjustments. The usual ones, the most common one is local adaptation, the one that opens on default. So you can expose it up and down, so you can make it darker, brighter, enhance some details, also light up the shadows and take the highlights down, and so whatever you want. But I think what I like more is, instead of using, oh no, one more thing before I change it. Here, if you look at those people, and I took those pictures, of course, right after each other, but you can see that some people moved during that time. And let's, 200%. Then you can see that there are some ghost images. It's called ghost images, and here's a button, remove ghost. So when you click on remove ghost, and you can see everything will be sharpened and clearer, because it's trying to remove those ghost images by simply looking at the area where it changes, and then only take out of one image. So what I want to do is I want to take the 32-bit function, and when you go to 32-bit, you might find that there is no way to adjust it here. So there's nothing that I can change, because it says complete toning in Adobe Camera Raw. So it means when I hit OK, it takes the image 32-bit and takes it into Adobe Camera Raw, which we had already before in 1 or 2 sessions before. So there it is, it opens, and then it goes into the Camera Raw filter. Still working on it, and here it is. So we are in our regular Camera Raw filter, and now we can do whatever we did in this session. So if you're not sure what to do in this Camera Raw filter, just go to the general image adjustment session that I did. And then you can do whatever you want. So you make it darker. You bring the blacks up and the shadows. Take the highlights down. Bring some texture and clarity and dehaze back. Maybe not too much dehaze. Some vibrant colors and make it everything slightly warmer. So whatever you want, the outcome. There it is. And once you hit OK, so what's the big advantage of doing this? You're starting with a 32-bit, and now you end up with a 16-bit image. So whatever you do, for example, bring brightness up and down, or take the exposure and make it brighter or darker, it brings you back more detail compared to an 8-bit RGB image. So all those brightness levels, there's much more. And also locally, you could go in to get some local adjustments like this. But that is quite a nice picture there. So what would I do, for example, if I would use it for Instagram? So I could make it square maybe. Let's adjust the position a bit. So here it is, and that would be a picture that I would upload. Okay, so that is the HDR function under File, Automate, and Merge to HDR Pro. Okay, the next thing, and it's not done under Automate. Let me quickly close my picture here. The next thing is found under File and Scripts. I don't know exactly what the difference is between now scripts. Later on there's some export scripts I'm going to show you, and also then we continue with building some actions. There's not much of a difference. It's all automatic functions somehow that are running in Photoshop. So let's start with a script, and that is something I use quite a lot, and that is the load files into stacks. So if you have a set of images that you want to all open and bring it into one image in Photoshop as different layers, that is the way to go. So scripts and load files into stack. And then of course, same window, you browse for your directory. So let me go for the stack thing. Oh, I should have, yeah, stack thing. And now here you can see I took, we already had it, there's a different Photoshop session, a YouTube video about the empty and full city images. So I took the pictures from there. So here it is, 6, 7 different images. I select them all, hit OK, and they will be loaded. Attempt to ultimately align, not necessary here. And see, it will load. It will load the 7 images into one folder, and this is the example where we multiplied some of the cars and so on. So that is quite helpful if you have a couple pictures and you all want to load them into one image. Of course, they have to have the same size, otherwise some would be smaller and larger and so on. So that is to get more files into one on different layers. And the opposite is also possible if you have an image that is made out of different layers and you don't want to only export the final result, which is usually, the top layer and everything, all the adjustments, but you want to export every single layer as an extra file. There's also a function, and it's here. It's not under File Scripts, but under File Export. And under Export, you will find the opposite, Layers to Files. So you can define what is the name prefix. So let's call it Untitled 1. Where do we put it? I'm going to put it in the same folder quickly. And use JPEGs at 10 or 80%. You can also use only visible layers, but I'm going to use all layers because they're all visible. And then you hit Run, and there it is. It's going to turn one layer all off and one on, and then it says. And it was done successfully. There it is. Now we not only have our 7 images there that we had before, so those were the 7 images I had before, and when I exported them, here they are also loaded into the exported into the stack. Good. So let's get rid of those. The next function, so that was files save. Yes, in the one other thing here under export, you might also, if you have used Photoshop for quite a while, then you maybe miss one function that was usually right here in around the save somewhere, but now they moved it into export, and that is the function save for web. So imagine you're doing a lot of work for websites and you build logos and you build content for websites. You want to save them in the optimal way. You want to find the right file format, and you want to find the right file size and also color mode and so on. So when you go to save for web, it opens your picture in a little preview here. It's, of course, it's not a picture for a website, it's much too large, but now you can compare different file formats. And usually, when you look at the file formats that you see down there, this is, of course, the file size as it is right now in Photoshop, but if you save it, it will be different. And the Save for Web function gives you a quite accurate estimate how large the file will be once you save it, in this case as a GIF file. It will be 6.7 megabytes and so on. So let's try 2 different file formats. Of course, the one I have here, it's clear that it has to be saved as a JPEG, so you can choose JPEG and you can choose the quality. And here is a real and accurate size, it will be 2.04 megabytes saved as a JPEG. Okay, so you can also see what happens if I make it like 50% smaller. So you can type in 50% here, and then okay, you can see it only has this and this size. Oh no, maybe that will not update here. The rest is if what other format might be interesting. Oh, now it updated. Okay. So by making it 50%, it's now only 620K. So what else could work here? A PNG, for example, could work. Yes, it's 1.4 megabytes, but PNG has a lot of advantages. It's a non-compressed format, so it means it's always the same, not like JPEG. Every time you save it, it looks slightly different. Okay, so that's something I wanted to show you. Also, if you choose a file format that allows you to define the amount of colors that are used, for example, for logos and so on, you might want to use a GIF image. On the GIF image, you can choose how many colors. For example, let's just do 8 colors, and here is the file size that you get, and you can also judge the quality, how it looks like. Here, let me zoom out a bit. It would be a GIF only made out of 8 images, out of 2, or just out of 4, or out of 2 colors. So that is quite a good mode for creating websites, and you want to find the optimal file size for a file format for your needs. Okay, I'm not going to save it right now. That was just something I wanted to show you. No. So much for the ready-made automated functions. Let's create our own, and I would like to start with a folder in which I have a couple of images, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to batch convert those images into doing some changes and record a automated function. It's called an action. So first, let's take all the images and drag and drop them into Photoshop. Not all the images, in this case the 10 or so that I opened. And as you can see, I'm going to start here with the first one. As you can see, the image is 4,800 pixels, and I would like to upload it, for example, to Facebook, and I don't want to give them my full resolution image, so I'm going to reduce the size of the images to, let's say, 1200 pixels wide, and I'm also going to apply a watermark into the image, so to mark them as those are my own images. And as I don't want to do it with all the images, I'm going to record a so-called action. First of all, batch converting a bunch of images can be done much better in a different software, so I would usually use Lightroom for that. But in this case, it's a quite simple task, and I would like to show you how to do it in Photoshop. So I'm going to start with the first image, and I'm recording all the stuff I do to the image. It's called an action, and it's here with this arrow. If you don't have it open, you can also go to Window and Open Actions. And then you will end up with some action, and then you can close those and you can create a new action. So what I'm going to do is I'm doing all the changes to one image, and while I'm recording it, and then I'm going to apply it to all the other images. But first of all, the folder that I've shown you, the folder of the images are copies, so make sure you copy them first, because now it's much easier to just overwrite them. So I'm going to make a copy of all the files, and then I'm overwriting them with the new ones. So let's get rid of this. First, you start a new action. So here in action is a new button. No, new. So, and I'm going to call the actions resize for Facebook, for example. So that's my function. I can use it anytime later. I'm not. You can also use a key, a shortcut for that, but I'm not going to use it because my keys are used for something else, and I'm just using the play button there. And now I start to record. So now, from now on, it's recording everything I do to the image. And I would like to start with resizing it. So image size. and I'm going to resize it to 1200 by 900. Okay. Then the next thing is, the zooming in is not recorded, by the way. The resize. Now I'm going to place some text onto the image. So I'm going to use the text tool here. White text is fine. I'm going to write my image. That is too big. Let's go for like this. Place it in the bottom right corner. Take the layer and make it like transparent. I'm going to make it like 15%. Also, I'm going to give it an effect, drop shadow. That gives it a little edge in case it's added to something brighter, you know, like a white background and so on. So here's my drop shadow. And the last thing is I'm going to save it, overriding the old one. So now I have two layers, so I cannot save it as a JPEG. So the next thing is I'm going to go for layer, flatten image. Now it's one background layer. And now I can save it, file, save. That's good. So same name, and also I'm closing the image. Now the recording is done. So I did everything to the image, including the saving and the closing of the image. So if I have now my remaining 10 images open, that means I can now, each of them, as soon as I'm done, will be closed. So now all I need to do is I just go to my next image. It will jump to the next image anyway, and I just let me close that, select my resize for Facebook, and play. Done. Okay, one more time, play, done, play, play, and so on. So let me do that 3 more times. That is where a shortcut comes in handy. But now you've seen all my changes are done. So let me open this one. You can see it has been resized to 1200 by 900, and it had the effect included, the watermark kind of included. Okay, so that is how you do it. You record your action this way. So let me. Crashed. Good. Let's go to the next step. So the next step that I'm going to show you is one thing that I do sometimes, and that is when I shoot pictures with my 360 camera. So that's a camera that shoots picture in 360 degrees. Those 360 degree pictures, they have to be photoshopped in order to get certain elements out. And let's open one like this, and I'm showing you what it is. So a 360 degree image is a picture that has an aspect ratio of 2:1, so it's twice as wide as it's high, and it is in a spherical projection. It means it can be projected onto a sphere. So you can see on the south pole of the sphere, so here would be the horizon or the equator, and on the south pole there is me holding the camera. But if I would like to Photoshop me out of the picture, that is a lot of work because I'm kind of occupying all the pixels in the bottom of the picture. That's why I'm going to use a different projection, and then it's much easier to Photoshop me out. And the projection I'm using is also sometimes it's a spherical projection. It's also sometimes called tiny planet, because it looks a little bit like a tiny planet with all the sky around it. But let me show you what I do and how I record it as an action. So I'm going to start a new action, and I'm going to call it 360 to edit. So it's a 360 image now, and at the end is the one where I want to edit the me out of the picture. So record. The first thing I need to do with the image is I need to rotate it 180 degrees. You'll see it why. Image rotation 180 degrees. So now I'm on the North Pole instead of the South Pole, and now I'm going to apply a filter to my image and that filter is called, where is it called? Distort Polar Coordinates. So you can choose from a rectangular coordinate to polar, to circular, or from circular to rectangle. I'm going to use from rectangle to circular, and you'll see what the result is. Okay, and there it is. Now it's, I'm in the middle of the image, and much easier to Photoshop because I'm standing on the green grass holding the camera. Here's a pole in my hand. You can see the shadow a little bit, so like half a meter, 3 feet above my head. And now I'm going to Photoshop me out. So that is a really simple task to Photoshop you out. So you can use clone stamp tool, you can use the spot healing tool. I prefer the clone stamp tool because this is where I can precisely define which part of the grass goes on which part of me, so to say. And I can pick from different locations in order to repeat a repetitive pattern. So that's it. So let's get rid of this dirty spot here. And we're done. Oh, I'm so sorry. I should have stopped the recording because I just wanted to show you, I didn't want to show you how to edit a 360 picture. I wanted to show you how to record the action. So here is my 360 to edit, and basically the clone stamp tool is everything I did not want to record. So let's select all these pieces here. First, shift last, and hit delete. Let's try if I can use it. Delete, yes. So now what I have recorded is only 360. To edit is the rotation and the polar coordinates. Now I have edited myself out, and now I'm going to do the same thing backwards. And this is also something I would like to record because I'm doing it quite often. So I'm recording another action, calling it edit to 360, because that is the same way, only backwards. So I hit record. That means first I'm going to apply the filter, distort polar coordinates. This time it's polar to rectangular. And now you see why we rotated it 180 degrees in the beginning. So now I have to rotate it back. Image rotation 180 degrees. That's it. Stop recording. So that is my 2 parts, starting the 360 image to the point where I want to edit it, and then from the edit back to the 360, and now I could save it and I am out of the picture. Okay, makes sense too, because if you like to have 20 or 30 pictures to edit, this is something that can get quite annoying. All the same 2 or 3, it's only 2 or 3 steps, but here's just 1 click. So let's do it one more time with a different 360 image, and I'm pulling in another one. Here it is from the Roby House in Chicago. In this case, it's not me holding the camera, but it's a tripod that I want to Photoshop out. So now I have my action 360, play, and I'll end up with my tiny planet thing. So I'm going to zoom in. This time I'm just using the spot healing tool. It's such a small piece in a neutral environment, and then you can even like clean up the concrete there. And when you're done, edit back to 360, play, and there it is, my 360 image with the clean South Pole. Okay, so that is a good task for putting it into an action. Good. The next example, the last example actually, is something that we already did in a previous lesson, and that is using an saturation mask. I'm quickly going to show you what I mean. Let's get any picture. So here is any picture. And it works especially well for landscapes where there's green on it and so on. So we found out that when you increase the saturation, of course with a adjustment layer, so here's an adjustment layer, a hue and saturation, and when you crank up the saturation, you see that a few things just react weirdly. So some get weirdly oversaturated, and they also change the color. Also the sand here and the green somehow looks similar because it all gets cranked up way too much. And we can see also parts of the JPEG compression. So by the way, that is JPEG compression here in the sky, because it's usually a gradient, and the pulling up of the saturation makes it weird. So that is not really working well. So instead of having an adjustment layer without anything, we use a saturation mask. And now when I record it, maybe you'll remember what it was. If not, I'm going to link it to you up here where the video was, how to do a saturation mask. But let's get it started. Here's a new action that I'm going to record, new, and I'm going to call it saturation mask. Let's call it create saturation mask, because I already have an action called a saturation mask. So create saturation mask, record. The steps are always the same for a saturation mask. First, you need to duplicate the layer, because it's destroying the layer. So I'm going to do it with a duplicate. Take the duplicate, apply a filter to it, and the filter is called other HSB HSL. That stands for hue, saturation, brightness, or hue, saturation, lightness. And I'm going to use the hue, saturation, and lightness. So when the picture is now made out of 3 channels which represent RGB values, now we're going to end up with 3 channels representing hue, saturation, and lightness values. And what we want is the middle one, the saturation. So I hit OK, and now I get a really strange picture, because it looks unnatural, but every value in here is made out of 3 values, 3 times 256 values, and everyone represents hue, saturation, and brightness. So if we go to channels here, we can see the red, green, blue. They are still called red, green, blue, but they are actually hue, saturation, and value. And what we want is, we want the middle one, the green one, which is actually saturation. And what you want is, you want to turn the channel into a selection, and that is done by Control-click on the channel's icon. So Control-click, you see, turns the picture, it's a grayscale picture, into a selection. And now, with this still selected, let me delete my layer copy. So pull it onto delete. See, it's still selected, and with the selection on, I'm going to apply an adjustment layer to my background, and while something is selected, it means only the selected areas will be influenced. So let's do this quickly and stop the recording, because this is what I wanted. I wanted to turn it into a hue, saturation, and lightness, and take the saturation layer and bring it into a mask to control the saturation adjustment layer. This is how the mask looks like, by the way. So it still looks strange, but it defines where are the areas that have a lot of saturation and where have no saturation. And if you bring this into the mask for the adjustment layer, now if I increase my saturation, it will only apply it to those where it looks natural. See, and even if I go all the way up, you can see it beautifully brings a nice color to the lake, and also to the background landscape, and the sand or the rocks here in the foreground, they don't get any saturation at all. So the before and after really makes colors pop in this example, and that is what we want this action for. So the saturation mask really helps you to quickly create this layer with the mask. So let's close the picture and do it again with something else. So for example, here is another landscape picture with greenery. Of course, I could use something else. I can use some dehaze in the background and so on. But the action create saturation mask. Now I just hit play, and there it is, my adjustment layer, and now I can increase the saturation all the way where I want it, and here's my before and after. It will only affect the layer that needs it. Okay, so that was the video. I have linked it before to the saturation mask. Here is, that was today just about actions, so how to use the ready-made automated functions, either under automate or the script to load files into a folder, or even the same thing backwards with export to files. Also check out the other actions. Maybe there's one of them that is helpful for you guys. And then we later on we recorded our own actions here into the action. There's also a long list of other actions that do something. You can check it out. They come with Photoshop, but your personal ones are here. You can also create a new folder where your personal actions are placed or stored. Okay. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video.